What if everything you've been taught about the most significant event in Christianity was only partially true? Have you ever wondered if there's more to the story of Jesus' crucifixion than what religious institutions have shared with us for centuries? Today, we're going to explore the extraordinary revelations of Edgar Cayce, the man known as the Sleeping Prophet, whose psychic readings have unveiled disturbing information that contradicts the official narrative of Christ's sacrifice. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the globe. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. For generations, billions of believers worldwide have accepted the traditional account of the crucifixion without question. But what if I told you that powerful institutions have been deliberately omitting, distorting, and manipulating crucial details about this pivotal moment in history? Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might fundamentally change your understanding of faith itself. Edgar Cayce wasn't just any psychic or spiritual medium. Born on March 18, 1877, in the small town of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, he emerged from a simple, deeply religious family with extraordinary abilities that manifested at a remarkably young age. Has this ever happened to you, experiencing something so profound that it defied conventional explanation? For young Edgar, these experiences were a daily reality. By the age of 7, Cayce claimed to regularly communicate with angelic beings and even conversed with the spirit of his deceased grandfather. His worried mother sensed something special in her son, a gift that transcended common understanding. While other children played typical games, young Edgar spent hours alone in the forest, immersed in mystical experiences that shaped his unique connection to dimensions beyond the physical world. What makes Cayce's revelations about the crucifixion so compelling is not just their controversial nature, but the meticulous documentation of his thousands of psychic readings performed over 4 decades. Through these trances, Cayce accessed what he described as the Akashic Records, a cosmic library containing every thought, emotion, and event in human history. It was as if he could witness these historical moments firsthand, describing them with surgical precision and intimate detail that baffled even the most skeptical observers. The story that emerges from Cayce's readings about the crucifixion paints a radically different picture than what we've been taught in Sunday school. Hidden conspiracies, secret agendas, and political machinations that have been carefully concealed from public knowledge for 2 millennia. What if the true meaning behind Jesus' sacrifice has been deliberately obscured to serve institutional interests rather than spiritual truth? If you want to discover more hidden spiritual truths like this one, hit subscribe now and join our community of seekers uncovering the mysteries behind history's greatest moments. What truly set Cayce apart from other children was the profound nature of his spiritual encounters. At just 7 years old, while most children were learning basic arithmetic and reading skills, young Edgar was having regular conversations with his deceased grandfather. These weren't vague impressions or childish imagination. They were detailed exchanges that revealed information no child could possibly know through conventional means. The veil between worlds seemed remarkably thin for this Kentucky boy, whose journey into the unseen realms would eventually reshape our understanding of spiritual transformation. The forests near his home became Edgar's sanctuary, a place where the boundaries between physical and spiritual reality dissolved. For hours, he would sit in solitude, engaging with entities and energies invisible to others. These formative experiences were laying the groundwork for the remarkable revelations that would later emerge through his trance states. Revelations that would challenge centuries of religious doctrine about the crucifixion and its true meaning. The pivotal moment in Cayce's spiritual journey came when he turned 13. During one of his mystical encounters, an angel appeared before him with a life-altering question: "What is your greatest desire?" This moment of divine intervention would set the course for his entire life's purpose. Without hesitation, the boy replied that he wanted to help others, especially sick children. This decision point, this commitment to service, would eventually lead to the hidden truths about Jesus' final hours that religious authorities have kept concealed. Shortly after this angelic encounter, Edgar developed an ability that defied all conventional explanation. By simply sleeping on his school textbooks, he could absorb and memorize their contents perfectly. His astonished teachers watched in disbelief as he recited entire pages verbatim from books he had never consciously read. This extraordinary gift was merely a glimpse of the deeper access to universal knowledge that would later allow him to witness and document the actual events of the crucifixion as they truly happened, not as they've been portrayed through centuries of carefully curated religious narratives. This ability to access information beyond normal sensory perception wasn't just an interesting parlor trick. It represented a fundamental breakthrough in human consciousness. Edgar was demonstrating that the mind could transcend the limitations of time, space, and physical reality to access a vast repository of knowledge. The implications were staggering. If the mind could reach beyond these boundaries, what other revelations might be waiting to be discovered about history's most influential events? Now, I want to go even deeper into how these childhood experiences prepared Cayce for his most controversial revelations about the crucifixion. The journey from a sensitive child with unusual gifts to becoming the most documented psychic in American history reveals a pattern of increasing access to what many would call forbidden knowledge. Truths hidden from the masses, but preserved in the cosmic memory of our universe. If you're resonating with this hidden side of spiritual history, write in the comments, "Seeking Beyond the Veil," so I know you're truly following this remarkable journey into the unseen. The true catalyst for Cayce's remarkable journey into the depths of universal consciousness came through personal adversity. At the age of 21, Edgar faced a devastating health crisis when he completely lost his voice due to severe laryngitis. This wasn't a minor inconvenience. It threatened his livelihood and future. After numerous doctors tried conventional treatments without success, Edgar's path took an unexpected turn toward his destiny as a revealer of hidden truths. In a moment of desperation that would ultimately transform countless lives, Cayce agreed to an unusual suggestion from a local hypnotist named Al Lane. What happened next would shake the foundations of medical science and open a gateway to revelations about history's most significant spiritual events. While in a deep, hypnotic trance, Edgar diagnosed his own condition with astonishing precision and prescribed a treatment that conventional physicians had never considered. The shocking result? His voice returned completely, defying all medical expectations. This personal breakthrough became a turning point that rippled far beyond Edgar's own life. News of his miraculous recovery spread rapidly through the community, and soon people began approaching him with their own health mysteries and life challenges. During these trance readings, Cayce would access a realm of knowledge that transcended ordinary consciousness. While in this altered state, he diagnosed complex medical conditions with surgical accuracy, revealed intimate personal details that he could not possibly have known through conventional means, and most remarkably, described historical events with the vivid detail of a first-hand witness. What began as a personal healing journey evolved into a lifelong mission of service and revelation. For 43 remarkable years, Edgar Cayce performed more than 14,000 documented psychic readings, creating what may be the most extensive record of paranormal information ever assembled by a single individual. His dedicated secretary, Gladys Davis, meticulously transcribed every word from these trances, preserving a legacy of knowledge that continues to challenge our understanding of reality even today. The scope of these readings was breathtaking, extending far beyond simple medical diagnoses to include detailed insights into past lives, prophetic visions of future events, profound spiritual philosophy, and perhaps most controversially, precise historical accounts that often contradicted accepted narratives. Among these accounts, none were more potentially paradigm-shifting than his revelations about the true events surrounding the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. What makes Cayce's historical readings so compelling is not just their level of detail, but their internal consistency. Over thousands of readings across decades, the information about events like the crucifixion remained remarkably coherent, even when the readings were given years apart. This wasn't scattered speculation, but a comprehensive alternative narrative that emerged piece by piece through a lifetime of documented trances. Let me take you deeper into the mysterious source of Cayce's knowledge, what he referred to as the Akashic Records, and how this cosmic library revealed events from that fateful day in Jerusalem that challenge everything we've been taught about the central moment in Christian faith. If you've ever felt that there's more to spiritual history than what we've been told, type "Unlocking the Records" in the comments below. The true source of Cayce's extraordinary insights wasn't merely psychic ability as we commonly understand it. It was something far more profound. During his trances, he described accessing what ancient mystics call the Akashic Records, a cosmic library containing the complete history of every soul and every event that has ever occurred. Imagine a vast interdimensional database where every thought, emotion, and action is permanently recorded in exquisite detail. This wasn't just abstract spiritual theory for Cayce. It was a tangible realm he navigated with remarkable precision. While in trance, he described the experience of reading these records as if watching a three-dimensional film of historical events unfolding before his spiritual eyes. The level of detail he could access was astounding. Conversations, motivations, even the private thoughts of individuals long departed from this physical plane. This unprecedented access to hidden knowledge allowed him to witness the crucifixion of Jesus Christ with a clarity that revealed a shocking alternative to the narrative that has shaped Western civilization for 2 millennia. Subscribe to our channel for more revelations that mainstream institutions don't want you to know about. Every subscription helps us continue bringing these transformative insights to light. What emerged from these readings was a portrait of the crucifixion that bears little resemblance to the simplified story taught in religious institutions. According to Cayce, Good Friday wasn't merely a day when Roman authorities executed a controversial religious teacher. It was the culmination of a meticulously planned conspiracy involving multiple factions with conflicting interests and carefully concealed agendas. The crucifixion, as witnessed through the Akashic Records, was a complex web of political manipulation, economic preservation, and power struggles happening behind a thin veneer of religious justification. The priests of the Sanhedrin weren't simply defending religious orthodoxy as traditionally portrayed. Cayce's readings revealed their desperate efforts to protect an enormously profitable temple economy that Jesus had directly threatened when he overturned the money changers' tables. The Roman authorities, particularly Pontius Pilate, weren't reluctant participants who washed their hands of the decision, but calculating political strategists using the execution to solidify their control over an occupied territory through strategic terror. Perhaps most disturbing were the revelations about certain factions within Jesus' own circle of followers. According to the Akashic records, not everyone close to Jesus was aligned with his true mission. Some had projected their own political ambitions onto him, hoping he would lead an armed revolt against Rome. When it became clear that his kingdom was not of this world, their disappointment turned to betrayal far more complex than the simple story of Judas that has come down through history. These hidden agendas converged on that fateful day in Jerusalem, creating a perfect storm of conflicting interests that led to what appears on the surface to be a straightforward execution, but was, in reality, one of history's most sophisticated conspiracies. The implications of this revelation are staggering, forcing us to reconsider not just what happened, but why it happened and what it truly meant. Let me reveal how Pontius Pilate's role in this conspiracy was far more calculated than the traditional hand-washing narrative suggests, and what was really happening behind the scenes during those crucial hours. If what I've shared has opened your mind to reconsidering historical narratives, type "veil lifted" in the comments below. The iconic image of Pontius Pilate washing his hands of Jesus' fate has been immortalized in artwork, literature, and film for centuries. But according to Cayce's readings from the Akashic records, this symbolic gesture of reluctant neutrality was perhaps the most brilliantly crafted piece of political theater in ancient history. Far from being a passive administrator caught between Jewish religious authorities and an innocent prophet, Pilate was a master strategist who carefully orchestrated the entire spectacle to serve his complex political agenda in this volatile province of the Roman Empire. The readings describe Pilate as a calculating governor who saw in Jesus a unique opportunity to simultaneously eliminate a potential catalyst for rebellion while demonstrating his authority over the Jewish religious leaders who constantly challenged Roman rule. The public washing of hands was a performance designed for the historical record, a masterful stroke of political misdirection that has successfully deceived historians and theologians for 2,000 years. What truly happened behind closed doors tells a far different story. The night before the crucifixion was a flurry of clandestine activity and high-stakes negotiations that would shape world history. Cayce's readings revealed intense secret meetings among members of the Sanhedrin that went far beyond simple religious condemnation. These were strategic sessions designed to craft a narrative around Jesus' execution that would send a carefully calculated message to his growing number of followers. The religious authorities weren't merely concerned about theological blasphemy. They were terrified that Jesus would become a martyr whose memory could inspire a full-scale revolution. The careful staging of his execution, the timing during the crowded Passover festival, the specific charges publicly emphasized, all were meticulously planned to ensure maximum impact while minimizing the risk of turning him into an even more powerful symbol of resistance. But perhaps the most revelatory insight from the Akashic records challenges the very foundation of why Jesus was crucified. While religious reasons have dominated the narrative for centuries, Cayce's readings exposed a far more mundane motivation: money and power. The true catalyst for the crucifixion wasn't Jesus' claims of divinity or his radical teachings about love and forgiveness. It was his direct threat to the temple's enormously profitable trading system. When Jesus overturned the money changers' tables in that dramatic moment of righteous indignation, he wasn't merely making a spiritual statement about sacred space. He was directly challenging a corrupt financial empire that generated colossal wealth for the priestly families who controlled it. This bold action struck at the heart of an economic system that enabled the religious elite to live in luxury while ordinary people struggled. By threatening this flow of wealth, Jesus signed his death warrant in a way that no theological disagreement could have accomplished. The crucifixion, viewed through this lens, reveals itself as an execution motivated by profit protection disguised as religious necessity. a timeless pattern of economic interests hiding behind ideological justifications that continues to shape world events even today. Let me take you now to the actual site of the crucifixion, which according to Cayce's readings was not where traditional accounts have placed it. If this revelation about money and power behind religious persecution resonates with patterns you see in today's world, write "History Echoes" in the comments. Even the location of history's most famous execution has been misrepresented in traditional accounts. The peaceful, isolated hill of Golgotha, depicted in countless paintings and films, bears little resemblance to the actual site revealed in Cayce's readings from the Akashic records. According to these revelations, the crucifixion location was not chosen for its solemnity or religious significance, but as a calculated instrument of psychological warfare against the population. The Romans were masters of propaganda through terror, understanding that public executions served a dual purpose: eliminating enemies while simultaneously demonstrating the futility of resistance. The true site of the crucifixion, according to Cayce, was strategically positioned along a heavily trafficked trade route where thousands of pilgrims arriving in Jerusalem for Passover would be forced to witness the gruesome spectacle. This wasn't merely punishment, it was a deliberate message, a warning displayed where maximum visibility was guaranteed. Imagine the psychological impact on travelers who had journeyed from distant provinces to celebrate a sacred festival, only to be confronted with the empire's brutal response to perceived threats against its authority. The placement was a masterclass in crowd control through fear, a technique that empires throughout history have refined but rarely improved upon. But perhaps the most compelling evidence that something extraordinary was happening that day comes from the suspicious timing of Jesus' death. Roman crucifixion was engineered specifically as a form of prolonged torture, designed to extract maximum suffering over days rather than hours. The typical crucifixion victim endured an agonizing death that could stretch anywhere from 2 to 7 days before their body finally surrendered. Yet, Jesus expired after approximately 6 hours, an anomaly so striking that it raised immediate suspicions among the hardened Roman soldiers who had conducted hundreds of similar executions. These weren't inexperienced recruits. They were battle-tested veterans who had witnessed countless crucifixions and knew precisely how long a healthy man should survive this particular form of execution. Their surprise at the speed of Jesus' death wasn't recorded as a theological observation, but as a practical assessment from experienced executioners who recognized something profoundly unusual was occurring. This accelerated timeline doesn't just raise questions about what was happening physiologically, it opens the door to a series of revelations about what was truly occurring behind the scenes on that pivotal day. The strangely abbreviated suffering suggests an intervention of some kind, a disruption to the expected process that points toward a deeper mystery at the heart of this world-changing event. Let me reveal what the Akashic records showed about the two men crucified alongside Jesus, whose identities and significance have been dramatically simplified in the traditional narrative. If you've noticed how historical events often seem to have hidden dimensions that only make sense when you look below the surface, type "deeper understanding" in the comments. The iconic image of the 3 crosses on Golgotha has become one of Christianity's most recognizable symbols. Yet even this seemingly straightforward detail contains layers of deliberate historical manipulation. According to Cayce's readings from the Akashic records, the 2 men crucified alongside Jesus were not petty thieves stealing bread or coins, as Sunday school lessons often portray. Their identities and the strategic reason for their placement beside Jesus reveal a calculated political maneuver that has been obscured for centuries. These men were zealots, members of an organized armed resistance movement. fighting against Roman occupation through guerrilla warfare, sabotage, and targeted assassinations. Their revolutionary activities made them heroes to many ordinary people suffering under imperial rule, though the official historical record has deliberately simplified them to anonymous criminals to prevent their martyrdom from inspiring further resistance. The man crucified to Jesus' right, traditionally known in Christian tradition as Dismas, was actually a respected resistance leader whose name, according to the Akashic records, was Bar-Abbas, not to be confused with the Barabbas released by Pilate, though they shared the same honorific title, which meant son of the Father in Aramaic. This wasn't coincidental, but a deliberate attempt to create historical confusion. The real Bar-Abbas had coordinated multiple successful attacks against Roman garrisons and was actively wanted for killing imperial soldiers and sabotaging military supply convoys. His placement beside Jesus was a masterful stroke of character assassination, a deliberate attempt to create guilt by association in the public mind. By crucifying this violent revolutionary alongside the pacifist spiritual teacher who preached, "Turn the other cheek," the authorities were sending a clear message. Both approaches to challenging the established order would end the same way. This calculated positioning was designed to tarnish Jesus' reputation among his growing followers by visually linking his peaceful movement with the bloody tactics of armed insurrection. The psychological impact would have been immediate and powerful. Many who witnessed the three crosses would naturally assume that Jesus must have been involved in violent resistance himself. Why else would he be executed alongside known revolutionary fighters? This manufactured narrative served both Roman and temple authorities, helping undermine the peaceful movement Jesus had cultivated by creating confusion about his true message. This revelation transforms our understanding of the crucifixion scene from a simple execution of criminals to a sophisticated propaganda operation designed to shape public perception and rewrite the narrative of a growing spiritual movement that threatened established power structures. Let me reveal what Cayce's readings uncovered about the mysterious thief on the left, a man whose complex relationship with Jesus contained a tragic dimension, completely lost in the simplified version of events handed down through history. If you're seeing parallels between these ancient manipulation tactics and how information is controlled today, type "History's Playbook" in the comments. The thief crucified to Jesus' left, a figure whose name has been deliberately omitted from official historical records, carried a burden far heavier than the nails that pierced his flesh. According to Cayce's Akashic readings, this man had once been among Jesus' devoted followers during the early days of his ministry. His journey from discipleship to the cross reveals the profound philosophical divide that fractured the movement from within. As he listened to Jesus' teachings about unconditional love, forgiveness, and turning the other cheek, this man grew increasingly disillusioned. He had expected, even demanded, that the promised Messiah would lead a military uprising against Rome, reclaiming Israel's sovereignty through righteous bloodshed. When he finally understood that Jesus had no intention of raising an army or claiming an earthly throne, his disappointment hardened into bitter resentment. He abandoned the peaceful path and joined the zealots, believing that liberation could only come through the sword, not through the radical compassion Jesus preached. In his final moments on the cross, racked with physical agony and confronted with the spiritual presence of the teacher he had rejected, this man experienced a complex emotional transformation. The traditional narrative reduces this nuanced human journey to a simplistic tale of rejection and condemnation. This thief mocked while the other believed, losing all the psychological complexity that made his story so profoundly instructive about the human struggle between idealism and pragmatism, between patience and immediate action. If these revelations about the crucifixion have expanded your consciousness even slightly, hit that like button to help others discover this hidden knowledge. Even the physical arrangement of the three crosses on Golgotha contained hidden meaning that has been overlooked for centuries. In standard Roman mass crucifixions, condemned prisoners were typically positioned in long horizontal lines along roadways or haphazardly scattered across execution grounds. But the triangular formation, with Jesus elevated slightly above the others in the center position, was a deliberate choreographic choice made by Pilate after consultation with his advisors. This geometric configuration wasn't random, but designed to create a powerful visual message that would be seared into the collective consciousness of everyone who witnessed it. This is the inevitable fate of anyone who dares declare themselves king, even a spiritual king without armies or territories, and thereby challenges Caesar's absolute authority. The elevated center position mockingly presented Jesus as an alternative ruler, while the balanced symmetry of the flanking crosses demonstrated Rome's orderly approach to eliminating threats. Behind this public spectacle, however, unfolded one of history's most mysterious interventions. The Roman crucifixion method was scientifically engineered to maximize suffering, with victims typically taking 2 to 4 full days to die from a combination of exposure, exhaustion, dehydration, and slow asphyxiation. Yet Jesus expired after approximately 6 hours, an anomaly so dramatic it profoundly surprised even the hardened executioners who had conducted hundreds of crucifixions throughout their military careers. Cayce's readings suggest this premature death wasn't entirely natural, but the result of a carefully planned intervention known to only a select few individuals. This revelation opens the door to an extraordinary possibility. The crucifixion itself may have been part of a much more complex spiritual operation than traditional accounts have acknowledged. What if Jesus' unusually rapid death wasn't a tragic acceleration of suffering, but a deliberately orchestrated transition? Let me reveal what the Akashic records showed about the mysterious role of Joseph of Arimathea, a figure traditionally portrayed simply as a wealthy supporter who provided a tomb, but whose actual involvement was far more significant and astonishing. If you're sensing there may be profound spiritual technologies at work behind history's most famous execution, type "Ancient Wisdom Revealed" in the comments. Joseph of Arimathea emerges from the shadows of history not merely as the wealthy follower who generously offered his family tomb, but as a pivotal architect in an extraordinary spiritual operation. According to Cayce's revelations, Joseph was a high-ranking initiate in an ancient esoteric order that preserved profound medical and alchemical knowledge dating back to the mystery schools of Egypt. Knowledge transmitted through carefully guarded lineages, accessible only to selected initiates. This secret brotherhood maintained deep connections with the Essenes and other mystical communities scattered throughout the Middle East. Long before the arrest in Gethsemane, they had meticulously prepared contingency plans in case the authorities moved against Jesus. Their preparations weren't improvised reactions, but components of a sophisticated strategy developed through months of careful planning and preparation. The cornerstone of this audacious plan involved a specialized substance capable of inducing a convincing state of apparent death. This alchemical preparation could dramatically reduce vital signs to levels imperceptible to even trained medical observers of that era. The concoction wasn't primitive folk medicine, but the result of generations of refined esoteric pharmaceutical knowledge, a sophisticated understanding of plant properties that wouldn't be rediscovered by conventional science for nearly 2 millennia. The mysterious drink offered to Jesus on the cross, traditionally described vaguely as sour wine or vinegar mixed with gall, contained far more significant ingredients than official history has acknowledged. The Akashic records revealed that the sponge contained carefully measured extracts from specific plants known for their powerful sedative and cardiosuppressive properties. These rare botanicals, whose secrets were zealously guarded by initiated healers, could perfectly mimic death when properly combined in precise proportions. When administered at the right moment, this preparation would create a physiological state where vital functions continued at a minimal level, completely imperceptible to outside observers without modern instruments, yet sufficient to sustain life during a crucial transition period. The body would appear lifeless to any examination available in the first century, while maintaining the essential spark needed for eventual recovery. This revelation transforms our understanding of that pivotal moment when Jesus declared, "It is finished," and bowed his head. Rather than a tragic final surrender to execution, this statement may have marked the successful implementation of the first phase of an extraordinarily bold spiritual technology, one that would demonstrate mastery over the very threshold between life and death itself. The timing had to be perfect. Too early, and the Roman guards might become suspicious about the unnaturally quick death. Too late, and the physical trauma might progress beyond the point where recovery was possible. The coordination required absolute precision from everyone involved in this clandestine operation, from the person who prepared the substance to the soldier who offered the sponge, to Joseph himself, who would later claim the body. But this remarkable intervention raises profound questions about the boundaries between natural and supernatural, between spiritual transcendence and applied ancient wisdom. If Jesus' rapid death and subsequent resurrection involve both divine mystery and applied esoteric knowledge, how does this change our perception of the miracle at the heart of Christianity? Let me share what Cayce's readings revealed about the Roman centurion who officially declared Jesus dead, a man whose role in this unfolding drama contained dimensions completely absent from the traditional narrative. If you're intrigued by how ancient wisdom traditions may have preserved knowledge that modern science is only beginning to rediscover, type "Ancient Knowledge Awakening" in the comments. The Roman centurion who officially declared Jesus dead wasn't merely a dutiful soldier following protocols, but a crucial link in this extraordinary chain of events. According to Cayce's readings, this officer had encountered Jesus during his public teachings months earlier and had been profoundly transformed by what he heard. While maintaining outward allegiance to Rome, he had secretly embraced many of Jesus' revolutionary spiritual principles, an internal conversion he kept hidden for his own safety, while quietly facilitating the unfolding divine plan. When approached discreetly by Joseph of Arimathea with a substantial financial incentive, the centurion recognized an opportunity to serve both his official duties and his private convictions. His role was pivotal. As the ranking officer present, his declaration of death would be accepted without question, allowing the swift release of the body before the approaching Sabbath made removal impossible. This critical timing ensured Jesus would be safely secured in the tomb during the crucial transition period when the appearance of death would gradually give way to restoration. Even the famous spear thrust into Jesus' side, another iconic moment immortalized in countless artistic depictions, contained hidden dimensions that have been obscured by centuries of simplified retelling. Far from being a random act of cruelty or verification of death, this precisely calculated wound was expertly placed to satisfy suspicious observers while deliberately avoiding damage to vital internal organs. The dramatic flow of blood and water described in accounts served as convincing evidence of death to witnesses, while actually resulting from strategic piercing of peripheral tissues that would bleed impressively without causing fatal trauma. This revelation transforms our understanding of the centurion's famous declaration, "Truly, this man was the Son of God. Rather than being a spontaneous spiritual epiphany, these words may have been part of a carefully orchestrated public performance designed to reinforce the perception that death had unquestionably occurred, when in reality a much more complex process was unfolding before the unseeing eyes of the crowd. The discovery of the empty tomb on the third day, perhaps the most pivotal moment in Christian tradition, takes on entirely new dimensions through Cayce's Akashic readings. Far from being the shocking, unexpected miracle portrayed in simplified narratives, the empty tomb was precisely what a select circle of initiated followers had been prepared to find. According to these revelations, Jesus had personally instructed a very small group of his closest disciples, those he had privately initiated into deeper mysteries, exactly what would happen during the 3 days following the crucifixion. This foreknowledge was deliberately kept from the official record to create a public narrative of a wholly unexpected miracle that would better serve the emerging church's teaching purposes. But for those within the inner circle, particularly those with training in esoteric traditions, the empty tomb represented not a surprising deviation from natural law, but the successful culmination of an extraordinary spiritual technology that demonstrated mastery over the threshold between life and death. Mary Magdalene's pivotal role in this unfolding drama reveals dimensions of spiritual preparation completely absent from traditional accounts. Let me share what the Akashic records revealed about her true identity and specialized training that prepared her for this world-changing moment. If these revelations about hidden dimensions of sacred history resonate with your intuition about larger patterns at work in our world, type "veils of history lifting" in the comments. Mary Magdalene's role in the resurrection narrative has been profoundly misunderstood and simplified throughout history. Far from being merely a devoted follower emotionally attached to her teacher, Cayce's Akashic readings reveal her as a highly trained initiate of the ancient Egyptian esoteric mysteries. For years before the crucifixion, Jesus had personally prepared Mary through intensive spiritual training to serve as the primary witness to his extraordinary transformation. Her presence at these pivotal moments wasn't coincidental, but the result of careful selection and preparation. Mary possessed rare qualifications for this sacred role. She had already been initiated into mystery traditions before meeting Jesus, bringing a foundation of esoteric understanding that allowed her to grasp concepts beyond the comprehension of most followers. Jesus recognized in her not just devotion, but the capacity to understand and later testify to the profound metaphysical transformation his body would undergo during those 3 mysterious days in the tomb. This wasn't just spiritual favoritism. It was strategic preparation for history's most significant demonstration of spiritual mastery over physical limitation. Her famous solitary arrival at the tomb well before dawn wasn't driven merely by emotional devotion or a desire to anoint the body, as simplified accounts suggest. According to the Akashic records, this was a meticulously timed and rehearsed component of a larger spiritual operation. Mary knew exactly when to arrive, where to position herself, and what to expect when the stone was rolled away. Her apparent surprise and confusion described in traditional accounts may have been part of a carefully maintained public narrative that concealed her deeper foreknowledge and preparation. She came alone because what she would witness was meant initially for her trained perception, a transformation so profound that it required specialized spiritual understanding to fully comprehend. Only after she had confirmed the successful completion of this metaphysical process would others be summoned to witness the empty tomb. Her role parallels that of initiated observers in ancient mystery schools who were specifically trained to perceive and validate subtle energetic transformations invisible to untrained eyes. The conspicuous absence of Roman guards at the tomb, soldiers who would face execution for abandoning their posts under normal circumstances, points to another layer of behind-the-scenes orchestration. According to Cayce's readings, these guards were strategically removed through substantial bribes arranged by several influential members of the Sanhedrin who secretly sympathized with Jesus and his revolutionary teachings of universal love and compassion. These clandestine supporters within the Jewish ruling council had maintained their public opposition to Jesus while privately providing crucial logistical support to his inner circle. Their access to substantial wealth and their position within the power structure made them perfect hidden facilitators for this extraordinary operation. By ensuring the tomb remained unguarded during critical hours, they created the necessary conditions for the most transformative phase of the process to unfold without interference or unwanted witnesses. What Mary encountered that morning, the man she initially mistook for a simple gardener, wasn't just Jesus recovered from his wounds, but a being who had undergone a profound alchemical transformation during those 3 days in darkness. Let me share what Cayce's readings revealed about the nature of this extraordinary metamorphosis that transcended both physical recovery and conventional understanding of resurrection. If you're beginning to sense how the boundaries between physical science, spiritual technology, and divine miracle may be more permeable than we've been taught, type "dimensions merging" in the comments. Mary's encounter with the man she initially mistook for a gardener represents one of history's most profound moments of recognition, a glimpse into possibilities of human transformation that mainstream religious teachings have only hinted at. According to Cayce's readings, what Mary witnessed that morning wasn't simply Jesus recovering from severe physical injuries after advanced medical treatment. He had undergone a fundamental metaphysical metamorphosis during those 3 mysterious days in the darkness of the tomb. This transformation involved simultaneous spiritual and physical processes that human language struggles to adequately capture. What emerged from the tomb existed in a state of being that transcended ordinary physical limitations, simultaneously present in multiple parallel dimensions of reality. This wasn't merely a resurrected body in the conventional sense, but a completely new expression of consciousness manifested in form. The being Mary encountered could manifest physically when necessary, could be touched, as Thomas would later discover, but was no longer completely bound by the laws of dense matter. He could appear in rooms with closed doors, vanish from sight, and alter his appearance in ways that temporarily prevented even close followers from recognizing him. These weren't parlor tricks or illusions, but demonstrations of a consciousness that had mastered the relationship between spirit and matter, between energy and form. This revelation opens extraordinary possibilities for understanding the true purpose behind the crucifixion itself. According to Cayce's most radical insights, the crucifixion was not primarily about the atonement of human sins through the sacrifice of innocent blood, theological concept that was later superimposed by systematizing theologians influenced by ancient sacrificial traditions of pagan and Jewish religions. The true revolutionary teaching at the heart of the crucifixion was a demonstration of the human capacity to completely transcend even the most extreme physical suffering through sufficiently heightened spiritual awareness and the absolute mastery of mind over matter. Jesus had attained a supreme level of consciousness that allowed him to consciously and voluntarily control his physical and emotional responses to the most brutal bodily trauma imaginable. The crucifixion was essentially an extreme public demonstration that developed human consciousness can completely master physical matter, that the immortal spirit is infinitely superior to the temporary mortal body. Jesus was literally teaching through the most dramatic example possible that the paralyzing fear of physical death is the last and most powerful illusion that imprisons humanity in self-imposed limitation and unnecessary suffering. This perspective transforms our understanding of the famous words, "It is finished," uttered moments before Jesus expired on the cross. Rather than referring to the final payment of an unpayable cosmic debt, these words mark the successful completion of a public demonstration of supreme spiritual power over material limitations, a teaching so revolutionary that it had to be somewhat obscured and reframed to be acceptable to the religious and political power structures of the time. Now I want to go even deeper into why this original empowering message was systematically altered over the centuries, and what this means for our own spiritual potential today. The implications of Jesus demonstrating achievable human capabilities rather than unique divine powers fundamentally changes how we might approach our own spiritual development. If you're sensing that these revelations point toward expanded dimensions of consciousness available to all humanity, type "awakening potential" in the comments. This revolutionary perspective completely transforms the meaning of Jesus' famous declaration, "It is finished." These three simple words, uttered in the final moments on the cross, have traditionally been interpreted as signifying the completion of a divine sacrifice necessary for humanity's salvation. But according to Cayce's Akashic readings, the deeper significance was far more empowering. Jesus was announcing the successful completion of a demonstration that consciousness can triumph over even the most extreme physical limitations, including death itself. This demonstration wasn't meant to elevate Jesus as uniquely divine and unreachable, but to illuminate the extraordinary potential dormant within every human being. It was a prototype of what enlightened consciousness can achieve, a blueprint for human spiritual evolution rather than an unrepeatable miracle by a singular divine incarnation. Yet this radically empowering message posed a fundamental threat to emerging religious institutions in the centuries that followed. The original teaching was systematically altered over time to emphasize the absolute uniqueness and complete inimitability of Jesus' sacrifice, rather than promoting his perfectly replicable example of spiritual transcendence. This transformation of the narrative served institutional interests perfectly. If Jesus' demonstration was entirely unique and impossible to replicate, then spiritual seekers would need institutional intermediaries to interpret and administer the benefits of his unrepeatable sacrifice. If, however, all humans could potentially achieve the same impressive level of spiritual mastery, what need would there be for hierarchical religious authorities controlling access to the divine? What makes this revelation particularly compelling is that Jesus hadn't achieved this extraordinary level of consciousness spontaneously or solely through divine grace. According to Cayce's readings, he had been meticulously prepared for this ultimate moment through many years of rigorous training and initiation in various esoteric communities across the ancient world. This included considerable time studying in the temples of ancient Egypt, the mystery schools of distant India, and among the contemplative Essenes living in desert isolation. During these formative years, he deeply studied and mastered ancient techniques of voluntary control over physical pain, profound transcendental meditation practices, and conscious projection of the soul outside the physical body. The crucifixion wasn't just a tragic execution, but the ultimate test of complete spiritual mastery. A dramatic public initiation where he applied everything he had learned and practiced for decades before thousands of eyewitnesses who could attest to what they saw. It was simultaneously a triumphant graduation ceremony and a profound pedagogical demonstration for all humanity to witness and learn from. This perspective doesn't diminish the spiritual significance of the crucifixion. but actually expands it, transforming it from a singular historical event into a timeless template for human spiritual potential. Cayce's final and perhaps most important revelation is that understanding the complete, uncensored historical truth about the crucifixion isn't merely an academic exercise or empty intellectual curiosity. It serves as a powerful catalyst for personal transformation and authentic spiritual awakening. When we fully comprehend that Jesus was demonstrating universal human capabilities rather than wielding exclusively divine powers inaccessible to ordinary mortals, it fundamentally changes how we approach our own spiritual development and quest for transcendence. If the crucifixion demonstrated what is humanly possible through sufficient spiritual dedication and consistent practice, then logically, every living person carries this same dormant potential for transcendence waiting to be awakened. The spiritual journey shifts from passive worship of an external savior to active development of our innate divine capacities, the very transformation that institutional religions have often discouraged in favor of dependency relationships. Let me reveal how these profound revelations about the crucifixion connect to your own spiritual journey today, and why understanding the complete truth about this pivotal historical moment might be the key to unlocking your own extraordinary potential. If you sense that there's far more to your spiritual nature than you've been taught to recognize, type "awakening my potential" in the comments. Edgar Cayce's revelations about the crucifixion invite us to see beyond the simplified narratives we've inherited and recognize the extraordinary spiritual potential that lies dormant within each of us. The true power of these insights isn't just in understanding what may have really happened 2,000 years ago, but in recognizing what this means for your own spiritual journey today. History's greatest spiritual demonstration wasn't meant to be merely worshipped from afar, but to serve as a blueprint for what's possible when we awaken to our full potential. The veil between the divine and human isn't as impenetrable as we've been taught. Perhaps what we've called miracles are actually the natural capabilities of fully awakened consciousness. If these revelations have resonated with you today, I'd love to continue this journey of discovery together. This channel is dedicated to uncovering the hidden spiritual truths that can transform not just your understanding of history, but your experience of your own divine nature. Subscribe so we can explore these deeper dimensions together. There's so much more to uncover. If you've made it to this point and feel that something has awakened within you, leave a comment saying, "The veil has lifted, so I know we're connected on this path of revelation." And if this perspective has expanded your consciousness even slightly, a simple like helps others discover these transformative insights too. I've prepared another exploration that takes these concepts even further, looking at how ancient initiation practices across different traditions all point to the same extraordinary human potential. Click the video appearing now to continue this journey of awakening with me. The deeper we go, the more we discover that the greatest mysteries aren't hidden in distant history. They're waiting to be recognized within ourselves.